The sun was dipping low over the rolling hills of rural Tennessee when Mark Harlan first laid eyes on the old Whitaker farmhouse. It was a relic, a two-story clapboard structure sagging under the weight of decades of neglect, its white paint peeled away in long, curling strips like the skin of some ancient beast. Vines choked the porch columns, and the windows, those that weren't boarded up, stared out like empty sockets. The realtor, a wiry man named Clint with a clipboard and a nervous smile, had warned him, "Place has been empty since old man Whitaker passed in '98. No one's touched it since." "You sure about this, Mr. Harlan?" Mark, a single father of two with calloused hands from years of construction work and a bank account thinned by a bitter divorce, had simply nodded. The price was right, dirt cheap, really, and the land, nearly 40 acres of overgrown fields and dense woodland, promised a fresh start. A place to raise his kids, Lily and Jacob, away from the noise of Nashville. A place to rebuild. He'd signed the papers that afternoon, the ink still wet as he shook Clint's hand and pocketed the keys. The house was his, but Mark wasn't fool enough to think he could move in right away. The roof leaked in a dozen places, the wiring was a fire hazard, and the foundation had shifted enough to make the floors slope like a funhouse. He needed time, supplies, a plan, so he locked the place up, nailed a "no trespassing" sign to the splintered front door, and drove back to the city. His kids were with their mom for the summer, and he had 3 weeks to get the farmhouse livable before school started. 3 weeks to turn a ruin into a home. The first week was all logistics. Mark rented a storage unit for his tools, bought tarps and plywood to patch the roof, and hired a buddy from his old crew, Tommy, to help with the heavy lifting. They'd start on the weekend, he told himself. Clear the debris, rip out the rot, assess the damage. But life, as it often does, got in the way. A rush job at a downtown condo renovation kept him in Nashville longer than expected. Then Lily got strep throat, and he spent 3 nights in the ER with her, holding her hand as she shivered under thin hospital blankets. By the time he loaded his truck with supplies, lumber, nails, a generator, cans of paint, and pointed it toward the farmhouse, nearly a month had passed. It was late August, the air thick with heat and the drone of cicadas, when he finally made the 2-hour drive back. The gravel road to the property was overgrown, weeds scraping the undercarriage of his pickup as he bounced along. The farmhouse came into view, and for a moment, Mark felt a flicker of pride. It was his, a project, a future, but as he pulled up to the gate, something was off. The "no trespassing" sign was gone. Not torn down, gone, like it had never been there. The chain he'd looped around the gatepost was unhooked, lying in the dirt. His stomach tightened. Vandals. Kids. He grabbed his flashlight and toolbox from the passenger seat, his boots crunching on the gravel as he approached the house. The front door was ajar. Mark froze. He distinctly remembered locking it, double-checking the deadbolt before he left. He'd even rattled the knob to be sure. Now it hung open a few inches, a sliver of shadow spilling out. He pushed it wider with his boot, the hinges groaning like an old man's knees. The air inside was cool, musty, laced with something else, something floral, faint but unmistakable. Perfume. His flashlight beam swept across the foyer. The dust was still there, thick on the warped floorboards, but it was disturbed. Footprints, small ones, bare or in socks, crisscrossing the grime. His pulse kicked up. Someone had been here. Hello, his voice echoed, swallowed by the empty rooms. No answer. He stepped inside, the floor creaking under his weight. The living room was as he'd left it, peeling wallpaper, a collapsed sofa, a stone fireplace choked with cobwebs. But the kitchen was different. The back door, which he'd boarded up with plywood, was unboarded. The plywood leaned against the wall, nails still in it. On the counter, where there'd been nothing but mouse droppings and a rusted sink, sat a loaf of bread. A half-empty jar of peanut butter. A knife with a smear of jelly on the blade. Fresh. Mark's mouth went dry. He set the toolbox down, his hand drifting to the hammer clipped to his belt. "Who's here?" he called, louder this time. Still nothing. He moved through the downstairs, checking the pantry, the dining room, the cramped bathroom with its clawfoot tub. Empty, but the signs were everywhere. A blanket draped over a chair. A candle stub melted onto a windowsill. A single sock, pink, child-sized, tucked behind a radiator. Someone was living here, squatting, in his house. He climbed the stairs, each step protesting under his 200 pounds. The second floor was worse, ceiling plaster crumbled in piles, the hallway runner rotted through. He checked the bedrooms one by one. Nothing, until he reached the master at the end of the hall. The door was closed. He hadn't closed it last time. He turned the knob slowly, pushed it open, and stopped dead. There, in the middle of the room, stood a woman. She was young, maybe 30, with long dark hair tangled down her back and eyes wide with fear. She wore a faded sundress, barefoot, her hands clasped in front of her like she was praying. Behind her, curled on a mattress that definitely hadn't been there before, was another woman, older, mid-40s, with grey streaks in her braid and a face etched with lines. She was awake, sitting up, staring at Mark like he was a ghost. The room smelled of lavender and sweat. A battery-powered lantern glowed softly on the floor, casting long shadows. A plastic bag of clothes sat in the corner. A stack of canned goods. A jug of water. "Who the hell are you?" Mark's voice cracked, the hammer half raised. The younger woman flinched. "Please," she said, her voice soft, trembling. "We didn't mean to. We didn't know anyone owned it. Didn't know." Mark's laugh was sharp, humorless. "There was a sign. A lock. You broke in." "We were desperate," the older woman said, her voice steadier, rough like gravel. "Door was open when we got here. We thought it was abandoned." "It was," Mark snapped. "And then I bought it. This is my house." The younger woman, her name was Sarah, he'd learn later, took a step forward, hands still clasped. "We'll leave. I swear. Just give us a day. We've got nowhere else." Mark stared at him, his anger warring with something else. Confusion. Pity, maybe. They didn't look like junkies or thieves. Sarah's dress was clean, if worn. The older woman, Clara, had a dignity about her, even sitting on a bare mattress in a crumbling house. There were no needles, no bottles, no signs of a party. Just two women, scared and tired, surrounded by the bare minimum to survive. "How long?" he asked finally. 3 weeks, Clara said. "Maybe 4. We kept to ourselves. Cleaned up after us. Didn't take anything that wasn't already here." "You ate my jelly," Mark said, and Sarah's lips twitched, almost a smile. "We'll pay you back," she said. "Every cent." He didn't know what to do. Call the cops. Have them hauled off for trespassing. They weren't hurting anyone, not really. But this was his house. His kids' future. He couldn't just let strangers camp out in it. Yet as he looked at Sarah's bare feet, at Clara's weathered hands, he felt the weight of his own struggles. The divorce. The custody battles. The nights he'd slept in his truck because rent was late. He knew desperation. One night, he said at last, "You stay tonight. Tomorrow, you're gone. I'll even drive you to a shelter if you need it. But this ends." Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. Clara just watched him, unreadable. That night, Mark slept in his truck, the hammer across his lap, the farmhouse windows glowing faintly from the lantern inside. He didn't trust them, not fully, but he didn't fear them either. At dawn, he knocked on the door. Sarah answered, a duffel bag slung over her shoulder. Clara carried a cardboard box. They'd cleaned the kitchen, swept the floors, left the mattress folded neatly in the corner. "We left the bread," Sarah said, "and the peanut butter, as a thank you." Mark almost laughed. "Where you headed?" "Bus station," Clara said. "Got a cousin in Tazewell. Says we can stay till we're on our feet." He drove them to the Greyhound stop in town, the silence in the cab heavy but not hostile. At the station, Sarah hugged him quickly, unexpectedly. "You didn't have to be kind," she whispered. Clara just nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. Mark watched the bus pull away, then drove back to the farmhouse. The door was locked this time, the key cold in his hand. Inside, the air still held a trace of lavender. On the counter sat the loaf of bread, a note tucked beneath it, "Thank you for the second chance, S&C." He stood there a long time, the note in his hand, the empty house around him. Then he picked up his hammer and got to work. The roof could wait one more day. First, he'd fix the back door. Make it strong. Make it his. But as the weeks turned into months, and the farmhouse slowly came back to life, new shingles, fresh paint, the laughter of Lily and Jacob echoing through the halls, Mark never forgot the women. He'd see a pink sock in a thrift store and think of Sarah. Hear a bus rumble past and picture Clara's steady gaze. The house wasn't just his anymore. It had a story, a heartbeat, and somewhere out there, two women carried a piece of it with them, just as he carried a piece of their resilience. The Whitaker farmhouse stood taller now, its windows no longer empty, its porch no longer choked with vines. And if you asked Mark Harlan why he never put the "No Trespassing" sign back up, he'd just smile and say, "Some doors need to stay open. You never know who might need to walk through."